Most people in that ballroom thought they knew exactly who mattered. They were wrong. My name is Rehan Khan, and this is the story of the night my own family found out I'd been signing their paychecks for years, without them ever bothering to ask what I did for a living. I shouldn't have gone. I knew the kind of night it would be the moment I stepped out of the elevator. Crystal chandeliers, gold uplighting, banners screaming, Entrepreneur of the Year, in big serif letters, waiters gliding past with tiny appetizers balanced on trays that cost more than my first month's rent. It was my cousin Ayan's big night. The golden boy of the family, the face on magazine covers, the man of the hour, and me. I was the afterthought they'd stuck at the back of the room, like a forgotten coat. Rehan? I heard my mother's voice before I saw her. She turned, eyes widening just a fraction. Oh, she said. You came. Not. I'm glad you're here. Not. How was your flight? Just you came. As if she'd left the invitation on the table expecting me to ignore it, the way they'd ignored me for years. She smoothed the beading on her sari and glanced quickly at my blazer and open collar shirt. You could have dressed a little sharper, she murmured. It's an important night for Ayan. I looked around at the men in velvet jackets and designer loafers. I'm fine, I said. She didn't argue. She never did. Arguing requires believing the other person's opinion has weight. Your table is over there, she said, pointing past the stage, beyond the sea of round tables. Near the service doors. Of course, I made my way through clusters of relatives, old family friends, investors with sharp eyes and sharper smiles. No one stopped me. No one asked how I'd been. A few nodded in a vague way, eyes already searching for someone more interesting behind me. Table 23. My name card was turned sideways, half hidden under a folded napkin. Rehan by. One of my younger cousins grinned as I sat down. Still working in that, what do you do again, computers? Something like that, I said. He laughed like it was a joke. The projection screens flickered to life with Ayan's face. A glossy montage, his restaurant openings, his interviews, his TEDx talk with a brick wall behind him and a vintage microphone in front. From a small middle-class family, the narrator said, to building one of the fastest growing restaurant chains in the country, Ayan Malik has done it all on his own terms. The table clapped. I picked up my water. On his own terms. Interesting choice of words. Because what they didn't know, what none of them at this table knew, was that the very man they were here to celebrate had almost lost everything 2 years ago, and the person who stopped that from happening was sitting 3 tables away from the stage, watching the waitstaff line up dessert plates. Me. Growing up, people used to say Ayan and I were like different channels on the same TV. He was color, noise, constant movement. I was subtitles, quiet text at the bottom of the screen. Easy to ignore if you weren't looking. He was the kid with the football under his arm, shouting for everyone to watch his latest trick. I was the one in the corner taking apart the family computer to see how it worked, putting it back together before anyone noticed. At family functions, the aunties would pat Ayan's cheek and say, "What a bright boy, so charming, he'll go so far." Then they'd turn to me and say, "Rehan is very sensible, he'll find something stable." I did. At first, it looked like what they expected, a job at a mid-tier bank, a cubicle, spreadsheets. What they didn't see, because they never asked, was what happened after. The late nights I spent learning about risk models, derivatives, how money actually moves in the world, the quiet promotions, the decision at 30 to walk away and start my own fund focused on early-stage hospitality and tech ventures. The fact that by 35, Can Capital managed more money than our entire extended family would see in 10 lifetimes. No one knew that name at home. They never bothered to. To them, I was still Rehan, who works with computers. Ayan, on the other hand, was a household name literally. His face was on billboards advertising his restaurants. Rust and Flame. Industrial lighting, exposed brick, overpriced sliders on slate plates. The first time he told the family he wanted to open a restaurant, they laughed. Do you know how many places fail in the first year? My uncle scoffed. Be sensible, my father said. Get a real job. But Ayan was stubborn in the charming way golden boys are allowed to be. He wore them down. He found a tiny space, painted it himself, posted shaky videos on Instagram. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. It was Ayan. We hadn't spoken properly in months. "Bye," he said, cutting straight to it. "I heard you're, doing something with investments now?" I smiled. "Word travels, even when people pretend not to care?" "Something like that?" I said. There was a long pause. "I need help," he said finally. We met at midnight in his empty restaurant. The chairs were upside down on the tables. The smell of frying oil still hung in the air. Ayan looked smaller without the crowd. He pushed a folder across the table. "I'm 3 months behind on rent," he said. "Suppliers are threatening to cut me off. The bank rejected my loan. They say restaurants are too risky." I flipped through the papers. Messy bookkeeping, sure. But underneath, I saw something rare, numbers moving in the right direction. Tables turning twice a night. People coming back. "You've done well," I said. He barked out a laugh. "Doesn't look like it," he said, waving at the empty room. "You've done well," I repeated. "You just grew faster than your cash flow." He frowned. "In English, bye." "You're not failing," I said. "You're suffocating." He dropped his head into his hands. "I knew coming to you was stupid," he muttered. "Forget it?" I closed the folder gently. "Ayan," I said, "look at me." He lifted his eyes, shoulders tense. "There's a fund I manage," I said slowly. "We back hospitality businesses that have traction but no runway. Your concept fits. Your numbers, with some work fit." He stared. "You'd invest?" he whispered. "In me? Not as your cousin," I said. "As an investor. With contracts. With expectations. This isn't a favor." He nodded too quickly. "Anything," he said. "Whatever terms you want. I can't go home and tell them I failed." There it was. The same fear I'd carried for years. Every time I thought about telling my parents I'd quit my safe bank job. I slid the folder back to him. "I'll have my team clean this up," I said. "We'll talk structure. But one condition." He tensed. "You can't use my name," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Why?" "Because if they find out the only reason you survived is because your boring cousin stepped in, they'll never respect what you built," I said quietly. "And you'll never know if you can stand on your own." Ayan considered that. "Then whose name?" he asked. "Northbridge Ventures," I said. "It's one of our vehicles, anonymous capital. They'll know a fund backed you, but not which one, not who's behind it." He squinted. "Like a ghost investor." I smiled. "Something like that." He stuck out his hand. "Deal," he said. We shook. I wired the first tranche a week later. 12 months after that, Ayan opened his third location. 2 years later, he was on magazine covers, telling journalists about the mysterious Northbridge that had believed in him when no one else did. At Diwali, my mother proudly told relatives, our Ayan made it on his own. No contacts, no handouts. I poured myself more chai and didn't correct her. I didn't need to. What I did need to correct, however, was a disaster brewing under the surface of all that success. 6 months before that award night, my chief risk officer walked into my office with a tight jaw. "We have a problem," she said. She slid a report across my desk. "Fraud flags. Accounting anomalies. One of Ayan's new locations was leaking money like a broken pipe. A vendor with a fake GST number. Over-invoicing. Cash skimmed before it hit the books. And worst of all, a planned expansion funded by a competitor, buried in a side agreement. Left unchecked, Ayan would spiral into debt, default on our covenants, and drag my investors down with him." I sat with it for a long time. Technically, I could have just pulled the plug. Called the loan, forced a sale, salvaged what we could. Instead, I called an emergency board meeting. "We clean it up," I said, quietly. "We install a proper CFO. We renegotiate the leases. We cut 2 underperforming locations. We restructure, then we decide." One of the older partners raised an eyebrow. "Because he's your cousin?" he asked. "Because the fundamentals are good," I said evenly. "And because this fund was built on backing people with potential, not just spreadsheets with perfect margins." They voted. By a slim margin, they followed my plan. For the next 4 months, my team and I were in the trenches with Ayan's company. Through intermediaries, through Northbridge. Never through me. We fixed his mess. We stabilized his cash. We turned a looming collapse into a modest profit. Narrow escape, my CRO muttered when the final numbers came in. For who? I thought. For Ayan, for his hundreds of employees, for my investors, for my parents who had no idea their future security was tied up in a company their irrelevant son had quietly rescued. All of them. 2 weeks later, an email popped into my inbox. Subaject Entrepreneur of the Year Awards, your presence from Ayan. Bye, it began, got nominated for a big thing. TV, newspapers, the works. It would mean a lot if you came. Bring mom and dad if you can. There's a special investor table. Some, Northbridge, people might be there. I want them to see our family. He added a winking emoji. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I booked a flight. At the awards, Ayan looked like the poster child the event had been built around. Custom tux, perfectly styled hair, easy grin. He worked the room like he'd been born in it. Ladies and gentlemen, the host announced, please welcome our finalist, the visionary behind Rust and Flame, the man who proved that with passion and grit, you can make it from nowhere to the top. Mr. Ayan Malik! The room erupted. My family stood cheering, clapping, whistling. I clapped too, but slower. As Ayan walked on stage, our eyes met just for a heartbeat. He winked. Then he turned to face the cameras. The speeches began. His college friend told a story about how Ayan once sold homemade sandwiches in the hostel and joked, some people are just meant to be hustlers. Everyone laughed. My aunt took the mic and said, in our family, some kids are born with the courage to chase their dreams, and some way are born practical. Both are needed. Her gaze brushed past me like I was a chair. My father added, Rehan always played safe. Ayan, he taught us that sometimes you must take risks. They toasted to the risk taker and self-made success. Someone at our table nudged me. See, Rehan? He said. If you had taken a few risks like Ayan, maybe you'd be up there too, whom? I smiled without showing teeth. I thought of the 8-figure credit line I'd approved last month. The market crash we'd sighed, stepped. The nights I'd stared at spreadsheets until dawn, making decisions that would ripple through thousands of lives. But sure, maybe I should have taken a few risks. The host cleared his throat. And now, he said, we have a very special guest tonight, the man behind the mysterious fund that believed in so many of our finalists when no one else did. Please welcome Mr. Devendra Sharma, chairman of Northbridge Ventures. Polite applause. Devendra walked up, unhurried. Silver hair, simple suit, no theatrics. My board's public face. He took the mic and smiled, but his eyes were scanning the room, searching. I suddenly had a very bad feeling. Will live? Devendra began, in a world that loves to talk about self-made success. Soft laughter. I've been in finance 40 years, he said. I have never met a single self-made person. I have only met people who are very good at forgetting who held the ladder for them. The room quieted. At Northbridge, he went on, we were built differently. We were built by someone who hates microphones, who avoids photos, who once told me, if they know my name, I'm doing my job wrong. A few people chuckled. At his request. I've been the public face of this fund, Devendra said. I've gotten the handshakes, the speeches, the pleasant dinners with people who had no idea the real mind was somewhere else, quietly reading the fine print. He paused. Tonight, watching this room, I realized that has to change. His gaze landed on me and stayed there. My jaw tightened. No, not here, not like this. I watched a man at table 23, Devendra said, be talked over, minimized, and joked about for playing it safe by the same people whose futures he personally safeguarded. A cold ripple moved through the room. My mother stiffened. My father's hand froze halfway to his glass. On stage, Ayan's smile faltered. Devendra turned slightly, pointing not with his hand but with his words. Rehan Khan, he said, voice steady. Founder and managing partner of Khan Capital. Architect of Northbridge Ventures. The person who fought to back Rust and Flame when everyone else said no. The person who personally designed the plan that pulled them back from the edge 6 months ago when they almost lost everything. My name hung in the air like something fragile and heavy at the same time. I didn't move. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me. Confusion, shock, a few dawning realizations from people in the industry who suddenly connected articles they'd read to the man they'd just ignored at the buffet. Devendra continued. When Ayan came to us, his numbers were messy, but his idea was sound, he said. Our investment committee was split. It was Rehan who saw what others didn't. It was Rehan who said, people will keep coming back to that kind of warmth. The spreadsheets will catch up. Murmurs. He also insisted his name never appear on a single document, Devendra said. He didn't want to cast a shadow over his cousin's work. He didn't want anyone in this family to say, oh, Ayan only succeeded because Rehan pulled strings. He chose to disappear so someone else could shine. He let that sit there. And tonight, Devendra added, voice lowering, I watched that same family talk about self-made success and risk-taking without realizing the quietest person at their table is the one who has been carrying their safety net. He looked at my parents then, directly. With all due respect, he said, if you're going to celebrate courage, at least learn what it actually looks like. A heavy silence dropped over the room. On stage, Ayan looked like someone had unplugged him. His face, usually animated, was blank. Somewhere behind me, a fork clattered against a plate. I exhaled slowly. Devendra turned back to me. Rehan, he said. Softer now. I know you're going to hate me for this. You asked me more than once to keep your name out of lights. But there are times when silence stops being humility and becomes permission for disrespect. I won't be part of that. We held each other's gaze for a moment. Then he did something I never expected. He raised his glass. To the man behind the curtain, he said. To the one who doesn't need the stage but built it anyway. Thank you. A few people clapped, tentatively at first. Then more. My table stayed frozen. My mother's face was bloodless. My father's mouth was a straight line. Ayan was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. Not as the cousin sitting in a corner at family gatherings, fixing the Wi-Fi. As something else entirely. I didn't smile. I didn't stand. I just placed my napkin on the table and rose quietly. I think that's my cue, I said under my breath. No one stopped me. As I passed our family's table, my aunt reached out as if to touch my arm, then let her hand fall. Rehan, my mother breathed. I paused. Yes, I said. She opened her mouth. Closed it. She had no script for this version of me. She began. It's fine, I said gently. Enjoy the show. Her eyes glistened, but no words came. For once, the people who always had something to say didn't. I walked toward the exit. Behind me, the applause swelled again, this time for some sponsor video. The host tried to smooth over the disruption with a joke. The music rose a little too loudly, a familiar trick to cover the discomfort in a room where something true had just been said. It didn't work. You can't put that kind of truth back in the bottle. The night air outside was cool, the city humming beyond the hotel driveway. I stood there for a moment, under the orange glow of the street lamps, watching drivers line up, engines idling. I didn't feel triumphant or vindicated. I just felt light. Like I'd been carrying a weight for so long I'd forgotten it was there, and someone had quietly unhooked it from my shoulders. Rehan. I turned. Devendra was there, coat over his arm, expression apologetic. You're furious with me, he said. I considered it. I'm surprised, I admitted. He nodded. I know what you sacrificed to stay anonymous, he said. But I've watched them erase you with a smile too many times. Tonight I watched it happen in my own funds event. I couldn't let it go. I looked back through the glass doors. I could see Ayan now, off to the side, being approached by journalists. He wasn't smiling as widely as usual. You didn't do it for me, I said quietly. Devendra followed my gaze. No, he said. I did it for the younger version of me who sat at tables like that, thinking he had to earn the basic right to be seen. He hesitated. And for what it's worth, he added, your work these last few years, it's beyond what most people in our industry manage in a lifetime. Titles don't impress me. Integrity does. He handed me an envelope. Open it later, he said. You'll pretend you don't care. Then you'll file it in that drawer where you keep the things that matter. I blinked. How do you? He smiled. I've known you a long time, Rehan. Then he left, walking back inside to do damage control, to shake hands, to perform the rituals of the world we worked in. I went the other way. Back to my car, back to the life I'd built far from the glow of my family's approval. The next morning, in my office, the envelope waited on my desk. I made coffee. Answered emails. Reviewed a term sheet. Then, finally, I opened it. It wasn't thick. Just a single sheet of paper. Rehan, it said in Devendra's neat handwriting. You've been running this place from the shadows long enough. The board voted unanimously last night. Effective immediately, you are chairman of Northbridge Ventures. No more hiding behind old men with gray hair. It's time they knew whose capital they're really courting. There was a printed resolution attached with signatures. At the bottom, in ink. You didn't need this title to be who you are, but sometimes, the world needs labels to catch up to reality. D. I set the letter down next to a few things I kept in that drawer, my first business card, a faded note to myself from years ago that read, in my cramped handwriting, do work you'd be proud of even if no one ever knew it was you. And now, this. A line connecting who I'd been to who I'd become, with or without anyone's applause. My phone buzzed. 16 unread messages from the family group chat. From Ayan, bye. Can we talk? Please. From my mother, we had no idea. Why didn't you tell us? From my father, proud of you. Should have said it earlier. I stared at the screen. Then I put the phone face down. I wasn't angry. I just wasn't in a hurry anymore. For years, I'd chased a version of their approval that didn't actually exist. Last night showed me something simple and unforgiving. They hadn't failed to see me because I was invisible. They'd failed to see me because they weren't looking. Devendra had forced their eyes open, just for a second. What they chose to do with that was their journey, not mine. Mine was to keep doing what I'd always done, build quietly, decide carefully, protect the people who trusted me, whether or not they ever knew my name. We live in a world that worships noise, followers, likes, headlines, award nights with 2 bright lights. But real power signs a wire transfer at 2 a.m. that keeps hundreds of paychecks from bouncing. Real power picks up the phone and says, we'll restructure this. You won't lose your home. A real power doesn't need a stage. It builds one. And sometimes, when the lights accidentally turn your way, you don't have to perform. You can simply stand there, calm, unshaken, and let the room realize something you've known all along. You were never the background character. They were just reading the wrong script.